The time is 6:34. And I'd like Chris, if you're able to be a timekeeper for us.
Sure, no problem.
Chris has agreed to be timekeeper. Is there anyone present in the council chambers or online that would like to talk about non-agenda items? Okay, none present. Okay, we can move on to item 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to accept the September 15th meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second it, but I didn't see a draft of these circulated before these were in the packet. Did I miss that email or did they not get circulated?
I don't know. I made my edits and sent them back to Phil. I thought he sent them back out.
Chris or Josh, did you see a draft of these minutes?
I thought I remember seeing one. I could look quick.
I was at the same place as Chris. I was just looking.
Okay, maybe my email software decided to corrupt, so it's possible that I just never got it. I just thought maybe the process had changed and I didn't know about that. Okay. Anyway.
Actually, the last one I'm seeing is draft minutes from Phil for August. I am not seeing one for September. I know. I think you're right, Diane. I don't know that we got those in advance of the packet.
I don't think we did.
I don't think so.
Can we, Ron, just remind Phil to do that? It usually saves
They are in the packet though, correct?
They are in the packet. It just
Yeah.
usually saves time during the meeting if we can
Yeah.
see them. Plus, if we get, the sooner we get them, the more we can do any follow-ups that are
Right.
in the minutes.
Okay.
I have 2 things in these minutes. Are you asking for comments now?
I didn't get a second, so.
Well, I seconded.
Oh, did you? Okay. Didn't get to hear that. All right. All right, open. Let's have open for discussion or correction to the meeting minutes.
I would just like to change on, let's see, 5C. I'd just like to change the way that last sentence is worded that I brought up. How to count participants at the event. And the other one I had was
5C.
yeah. Under 5E, I don't think the group met with Debbie Dotson. I think that was just you, Chris. Am I right?
Yeah, certainly you and, I'm looking at that as well. Certainly it was not, Diane and Kim and I, it was me meeting with Debbie Dotson. So Chris met with, additionally, Chris met with Debbie Dotson.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay. Did you get those, Claudia? Okay. Any other discussion or corrections to the meeting minutes? If not, let's take a vote on approve the meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. All right, meeting minutes approved. Okay, next thing on the agenda item number 4, items for new business. Introduction of the resolution R-182.21, authorizing a design contract and budget amendment with EOR related to the Sherrill Drive stormwater improvements. Is there a motion for this resolution?
I make that motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Open discussion, Claudia? Is she muted?
She is.
Oh,
About that. So this is just an extension of the feasibility study that EOR had done for us in the Sherrill Drive area to reduce flash flooding on the street in that area. And there were two main components or two main recommended solutions. One was redoing some of the storm sewer in the street, and the other was dredging out the swales that lead to South McKee Farms Park Pond. So that's what this would do. It would go ahead and put together design construction plans for those two recommended solutions.
Claudia, were there any recommendations that the city opted not to do?
So there were a couple of different, there were a lot of different things that were looked at in terms of, I guess, what's the word? Configurations for storm sewer upgrades, or different depths that you could dredge to in the swales. And these were the ones that really had the most bang for your buck.
Okay.
Claudia, were there any other, I guess, just any other comments from the public regarding this additional study?
The biggest comment was that they wanted to make sure it's done next year. Yeah.
Okay,
They're not under the illusion that, I mean, there are a lot of people in that area that have backyard sump pump issues, and they're not thinking that this is going to solve that issue, right?
No, so this is specifically for flash flooding in the street.
Okay.
There is a different component that's being proposed, a sump pump collection system on Florian and Lyman Lane. So that's separately being discussed. I think we actually have an upcoming meeting with the neighborhood to talk about that, and the date and all of that is in the staff update portion of the meeting minutes. And then the backyard drainage problem, that's also a separate issue that's being discussed, and that's being discussed at the next Board of Public Works meeting. Yeah, this piece is just for the flash flooding in the street.
Of those other two that you just outlined, are those both also getting similar studies like this? Like, are they their own topics that we're engaging a vendor on?
So the backyard improvement proposals, that was actually part of this same study with EOR. There were two tasks. One was flash flooding in the street, and the other task was looking at potential policies or programs that could be put together by the city regarding private backyard issues, and what the city might be willing to do to help with that. So that was part of the same study. And then for the sump pump collection system, that doesn't really need a study. It's just sump pumps are running continuously. So if we were to put in a collection system, that would keep the water out of the street and put it underground into pipes where it can't cause like ice problems in the winter or slippery algae areas in the summer.
Would that just connect to the stormwater pipes then?
It would, right? Exactly.
Okay.
And then I'm sorry, can you remind me if these relate to the one where we had public comment a couple of meetings back where they were looking at kind of not being interested in adding a pumping station? Is that the sump pump collection component, or is that something else?
That was Curry Court.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
The pump station, yeah, the pump station was on the east side of the city.
Okay. Sorry, Curry and Cheryl were blending together in my mind. I just
That's okay, yeah.
Not too far away
They're
from
kind
each
of on
other.
similar tracks.
Just in terms of like the design stormwater events or rain events that were used to kind of put the new components to this design together. First question would be, I don't think that we had any super, I know we had some intense rainfalls, but I don't know that we had any like 25 or 100-year storm events, in Fitchburg this year. And then the second was, what, I guess, event was this designed for, if you know?
I would have to double check, but I believe the feasibility study was done with a 10-year storm. And it did provide significant improvement for the 10-year storm. And just to put that in perspective, this year we had a storm event that I believe it was the 1-year storm, and we still got flash flooding in this area. So it would
Okay.
it would improve things.
I see. Okay.
Is that 10-year storm standard, is that pretty common, Claudia, in terms of a study like this?
So the 10-year storm is the storm that you would typically design a storm sewer system for. So you would space your inlets and design your pipes to make sure that the 10-year storm is able to stay underground and not have spread such that it causes the entire street width to be inundated. Typically for the 10-year storm, you want one drivable lane in the middle of the street. And that's kind of the goal that you're designing for with the 10-year storm. So yeah, that's a pretty typical design standard for streets.
Was that 10-year storm standard set recently, or is that about to be changed to something more, considering 10-year storms happen like every 3 years now?
So the 10-year storm, the design standard being the 10-year storm hasn't changed in a long time. In terms of updating the storm events to be for example, in 2015, the 100-year storm was updated from 6 inches to 6.66 inches. That's something that happens periodically. I know that in Madison, they are updating storm events based on information put out by UW versus traditionally, I guess, across the entire country. Usually what's used are, why am I blanking on the name? NOAA Atlas 14. It's put out by, it's a federal agency that puts together those storm events. So that's what the city uses. And when those get updated, then it gets incorporated into our design standards as well.
So if we were in Madison, would Madison be building this to a 10-year storm, or would they be building it to accommodate a larger event?
I'm not sure what their road design standards are. I would assume that they're using a 10-year storm.
Okay.
But then what they're calling the 10-year storm, I don't know. I know that they recently changed their 100-year storm. So we use 6.66 inches. That's based on NOAA Atlas 14. Oh no, they didn't actually. They changed it to the 200-year event. So they designed, which is a whole different thing. That's rate control. That's not your streets. They do rate control for the 200-year event. But I would imagine that they're still designing their streets for the 10-year storm and making sure it doesn't surcharge for the 25-year storm. Rick, it sounds like you have some more information.
Yeah, no, I think, Claudia, I think your summary is good and appropriate. Madison is looking at for detention sizing. They're for new, and this is for new project. Obviously, Sherrill Drive is an existing, it's an existing facility that was just under designed, obviously, when it was first built in the 70s. Yeah, new projects or new developments are being handled differently. But yeah, generally for I'm sorry, Claudia.
Are they being handled for the 10-year design then?
For smaller, residential streets up to arterials and beyond generally are designed for a 25-year design storm, or like some DOT roads are 50-year design storm, unless like one of the caveats is that if it's in a SAG that doesn't have an overland flow, which I mean it's a little bit unclear because that's part of the problem that Sherrill Drive is a problem. Because the curb in the soil between the curb and the greenway is kind of creating a berm effectively. So there's not overland conveyance, for once water gets up to a certain height, and so you have the potential, a pretty significant potential for flooding, on a pretty regular basis, like Claudia said. generally a fast, an intense rainfall, even a 1-year design storm. And one of the other things to keep in mind is the design storms that we talk about generally are for assuming a 24-hour period. Now, the part of the biggest issue is there's all kinds of different intensity, duration, and frequency that technically, other designers and other places keep all of that in mind, and they'll pick the critical duration. And sometimes the critical duration is not a 24-hour period. A lot of times for Sherrill Drive, the critical duration is not a 24-hour period. It's a very short period because it's such a small watershed that drains to this area. You get a big, and the pipe is basically undersized. You get a big flash, and we also have really steep drainage area going to it. So it all gets there in probably, in minutes, from the far extents of the watershed to the bottom of Sherrill Drive. It's the storm that creates problems is generally, is happening in less than a 24-hour period. So that's one of the things that probably we as engineers need to do a better job of explaining to the public. And that's where folks like RCC can potentially help with conveying that message. But yeah, generally we use a 10-year, 24-hour design storm for residential streets like this for new design.
Well, my concern, Claudia, is considering that this is a problematic area because of the terrain and, well, I guess mostly the terrain, topography. Are we under designing this? I mean, should it be, if we're going to go to this expense, should we accommodate something bigger?
So I don't think so, because another component of this proposal is also to reduce the overland flow elevation. So that's something that Rick had alluded to, is sometimes if you are effectively creating a berm between the street and the swale, that can make it so that when water builds up to a certain elevation, even for the 10-year storm event, it really needs to get to a certain height before it can leave the right of way and get into the swale. So that's also part of what we're trying to do, is lower that overland flow elevation. So I think working together by changing that critical piece of the topography and then also upsizing the storm sewers will really improve things in this intersection. Well, the two intersections in Rossland to the east.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks, Rick.
I am curious on future stuff, if because, I don't know, in talking about this, I think it makes sense for this one, and I definitely appreciate the context on this project, but I'm wondering if we as a committee want to make a recommendation that future projects go up one milestone, right? That instead of working on the 10, we're working on the 25, just because the maps we're working from, and maybe even put in there until the maps get updated. I worry that we're working from data that is probably due to be updated, and until we get there, maybe we should be getting ahead of that with the likely knowledge that it's all going to shift in that direction anyway.
I guess so. Rick, if you have a comment, go ahead for it.
Sorry. Yeah, one thing to be aware of is that, obviously, as Claudia mentioned, City of Madison just updated their stormwater and erosion control ordinance this past spring, and Dane County has been going through a process to do the same countywide. So it's at some point in the future, once Dane County updates their ordinance, Fitchburg will need to update its ordinance in order to be at least as basically in compliance with Dane County's erosion control and stormwater management ordinance. That'd be a great time for RCC to be involved in reviewing, that City of Fitchburg ordinance to kind of talk through, potentially massage some of the language in there, or at least be aware of it, and then help to convey that both, to the general public. But that would be a great, and I suspect last I had heard from Jeremy Beluzik at Dane County and Josh Harder, it sounds like it's imminent. So, potentially here in November, but they've been saying it's going to be next month, the last, probably 6 months. So certainly, I would expect certainly sometime, before next spring, Fitchburg will need to follow suit with that erosion control and stormwater management ordinance, and the specific language is going to be for new developments. I mean, it's still going to be up to the city of Fitchburg to decide what they want to do in trying to retrofit problem areas like this. And again, I'd be hesitant to say specifically that you want to go, from a specific 10-year event to a 25-year event. One of the things that I think hopefully we'll have more information about a month from Daniel Wright at UW-Madison on the rainy day project. So that's basically a rainfall data exercise that Daniel is working on to basically gather data throughout Wisconsin on what the critical, both the rainfall depths as well as the critical durations that we should be concerned with. And then from that, people, either developers or design engineers or communities can actually grab that data almost in a real-time basis and say, for this event, this is what I want to use for my rainfall depth of choice for designing. So I think that's something to be aware of. And then, as that information becomes available, as I think the right time to have RCC involved in that discussion is when the city is going through and updating their erosion control and stormwater management ordinance.
Okay, I think we need to move forward here. It's spending a long time with the great things to talk about. We're spending a long time on this one resolution, which needs to get voted on. So
I'm still concerned. I appreciate that nudge, Ron, but I'm still concerned. I mean, are we jumping the gun then? Should we just wait until Dane County issues these new guidelines before proceeding with Cheryl Drive? Because the last thing we want to do is go through this and have it.
Diane, just to clarify, so Dane County is updating the ordinance. It doesn't actually impact street design, what they're updating. That's more rate control. So even when that is passed, it will not have an impact on street design. What the city of Fitchburg does is we follow DOT and DOT's guidelines for street design, and that's not being updated. So that piece is not going to change anytime soon.
okay, any other discussion? If not, let's take a vote to approve the resolution R-190, R-182-21. All in favor?
Right.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. All right, so approved. Moving on to agenda item 4B, review resolution R-190-21, setting of the 2022 solid waste rates. Hear a motion to approve them?
I'll make the motion.
Second? I guess I can second. Ron seconds the motion. Discussion? Claudia?
So I wanted to give a little bit more background information on this resolution. It sounded like there was a lot of discussion at the last RCC meeting about reducing the rate, and that it was an official recommendation from RCC to staff to reduce that rate from, I believe, 220 to 215. So that is something that I discussed with the finance director to see if the staff recommendation would change based on that. So here's, I guess, the additional information that I was given, and this is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. This is more finance related. But what she told me is that we have a policy. It's actually the general fund policy. And it's a policy that council has approved, and in the context of using it for the general fund. I apologize, 1 second. Sorry about that. So the policy is official as it relates to the general fund, and then it's being applied to this to the solid waste fund as a guideline. But that policy says that in our reserve, we should have 15 to 25% of the budget plus 1 year of state aid. And the best practice, my understanding is that the best practice is to only use your reserve in order to get to the top of that range. So we wouldn't want to use the reserve to get to the bottom of that range, but we could use the reserve to get to the top of that range. And then the recommendation would be not to use the reserve any further than that. So following that policy, which is an official policy unofficially being applied to this fund, and then using that best practice is how this rate came about.
Claudia, how did the 215 rate that we recommended, how would that violate that policy?
The 215 rate, so let me share my screen. If I can pull this up. Where did it go? Here we go. So 215, you can see here what the charge is. And then the very last column here is the percent unassigned of the annual budget, which would be left if we use that as the rate. Mm-hmm. And you can see that that falls to 23.5%. And the best practice is to only use your fund balance to get to the top of that range. So from 15 to 25%. So we wouldn't want to go as low as 215 because that would have us below that range.
So right now the recommendation is to have it at 220, correct?
Right. So that was based on making sure this doesn't fall below the 25%.
So if we make a recommendation to keep it at 215, does that carry any weight of anything?
I mean, it's something that council can decide to do that, and that can be your recommendation. But I think staff's recommendation in talking to our finance director would continue to be that 220 rate.
Why didn't you pick 219? Because that's still 25%.
And actually, that's a good point. I do not know why.
when Paul Woodard was the Public Works Director, we asked him about the percentage and how they figure out what the ideal percentage or target percentage was, and he said it's just a gut feeling of in other words, there was nothing scientific about it. He didn't mention the general fund parameters, best practice. And I'm not sure historically what the percentages have been, but I'm getting tired of these large increases. And I'm just not happy with this.
Are we losing med drop too? I'm just looking at the fees between last year and this year, and they went down. And is that because we're losing med drop?
So med drop is not something that we pay for because it's something that our police department takes to, I forget where they take it. My understanding is that we used to pay for that. And so for a couple of additional years, that was still a line item in our budget because it just wasn't caught. But now that's a free service, so we don't pay for that. I mean, besides staff time, police staff time.
So are we getting paid back for that from the last couple of years where it wasn't caught and Pelletieri was charging us for it?
No, so Pelletier doesn't charge us for med drop. That's a separate, the whole solid waste fund is not just for Pelletier, it's for all of our other solid waste expenses too. So if we budgeted it and then didn't spend it, we just have that money that would just go into our fund.
There's a grant available, Josh, for med drop, and I know that a couple of years that grant didn't get applied for, and so maybe those are the years that we had to absorb it, and maybe the police department is getting that grant now. I'm not sure.
Okay. This fund balance that we're talking about that has the 8-year breakdown below what you were just showing, Claudia, is that a general fund balance, or is that the solid waste fund balance?
That's the solid waste fund balance.
I mean, we carried $560,000 of extra funding last year. Is that what am I reading that correctly?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by we carried it. What do you mean by that?
I'm looking at the fund balance over the last 8 years, and it's gone up and down a little bit, but in the last 2 years, it's jumped from in like the high 200s to low 300s to like last year was 560,000. So I'm just trying to understand, like, when we talk about percentage of fund balance and what that calculation is going against, aren't we building up quite a bit of a larger fund over the last couple of years? And is there a reason for that?
Let me share my screen again. So this is what you're talking about here at the end of 2012, for example, it was 325 or 324. Right. It looks like it bounced around, and then more recently it's increased, most notably in 2019. And I don't know the history on how much the operating budget was at this time. I do know that we did have a pretty sizable increase in the operating budget for our last solid waste contract. It went up, I want to say it went up 30% or something like that between our last contract and this contract, just because of the way that the recycling market has been changing, and overseas not accepting recycling the way that they did in the past. So recycling has gotten more expensive more recently. So I would imagine that our fund balance, because we want it to be, ideally at least 25% of what it was in the past. So 25% of a much larger number, would mean that our fund balance has to be bigger than it was in the past to reflect that, if that makes sense.
It does. I guess thank you for the clarification. I mean, I think that's part of what's contributing to this idea that if we want to carry 25%, we're now carrying 25% of that, not
of the
decently
larger
increased budget over the last 2 years. And so I'm just curious if that is the new norm, if there was somewhat of an anomaly there, and we're going to keep catching, we're going to over allocate this year for that reason, and is, just looking at why we've had these increases the last 2 years, and if that's just now the level of maintenance, or if we think that the last 2 years have had some odd, boost in there that's caused that.
So definitely the boost was caused by our new contract with Pelletier. That will be the new norm because our contract is 5 years. So once we go out to bid again, I think in 2024, then we might be able to get a better rate at that time, depending on how the recycling markets are doing at that time. But definitely, at least currently and for the foreseeable few years, this will be the new norm.
Claudia, what was the rate increase from 2020 to 2021? Looks like to me it was around 3%.
Oh, and it's here at the top of the screen. So let me.
Yeah, if you look at the top of the screen,
so 2020.
you can kind of see the history.
Was 203.
You can see the big jump from 2019 to 2020, and then.
Yeah, there's the big jump.
Right. But it looks like with 2021 it was only like 2.8% or 3%, but now we're up to 5.25%. I just don't know why we're taking another 2% increase.
Sure.
Now, if we applied the same percentage, we'd probably be closer to the 215.
And I think we are applying less fund balance this year than last year. I'd have to look at that to double check, but we are applying less fund balance, I believe, this year than last year. And then next year, if we still want to continue to be above that 25%, then we would apply even less fund balance next year than this year.
Yeah, so this year at the
So-
bottom of that page, you have it. Last year we applied 44,000. This year the estimate is that we'll apply 33,000.
Okay, there you go. So that's
Mhm.
that accounts for a $10,000 jump.
So, I mean, is there inflation-based increase on Pelletari's contract year to year? I mean, to Ron's point, the idea that I guess I would hope that once we made this major jump to the new contract, that then we could maintain like a 3% year over year to just keep with Pelletari's pace. So is there additional movement?
So they do have unit costs that go up every year. So here's the 2021 unit cost based on our contract. And then you can see, for example, for refuse, it went from 6.87 to 7.06. And it goes up across the board. I'm not sure if that's a 2% or a 3% jump. I would have to do the math. But it does go up every year. And it's roughly about inflation.
Yeah, it's a 2% increase.
And then, another thing that was happening, and Claudia, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we had to add a couple of additional carts due to all the cardboard that people
That's
were.
right. That's a good point. So there's that change order, and that's another almost $10,000 there.
Okay. That's 10,000 for the year, and you spread that across 5,000 households. That's, a couple bucks. But it is kind of addressing the issue that we kind of saw in 2020 where people were, getting more cardboard because they're having more things shipped to their homes, so that's a portion of it. And then a portion is, the increase. Just a brief, I know we're like 15 minutes behind and I'm the timekeeper, so I'm not doing a very good job, but just a little bit more history for Ron and Josh. In 2019, we went up at pretty slow rates, and yes, there has been some things that have happened in recycling markets that did push, a pretty big jump in 2019 to 2020. And we did try to make some recommendations, related to the brush pickups, and Claudia had actually come up with a really, I thought pretty brilliant schedule to try to, we've had to add this big cost to the city, and she, had an idea of, what we could do to reconfigure our brush pickups to go from I think it was 14 to 10 or 14 to 12. Do you remember?
I think it was 14 to 12 was the recommendation.
Yeah. And that, would have kept our rate down a little bit lower. But ultimately when that went through, other commissions and council, they decided to keep the number of brush pickups at 12. And so, we tried to come up with some ideas on how we could keep it down. And I think we need to kind of continue to brainstorm ideas on, what we can do. A lot of it's out of our control with, kind of what the rates are that Pelletary gives us, and, what we had to do because of the amount of cardboard that we were seeing as a community. So I guess I would be curious as to, maybe understanding a little bit more from Pelletary as to what we can do in the future as a community to try to keep our rates, kind of not from jumping as much. And I don't know if that Pelletary is going to tell us that, but it would be nice to understand that better as to what we can.
Are we recouping some of that cart cost or cardboard? Cardboard feels like one of the few things where you can actually sell it on a market, especially in the way that Fitchburg collects it. And so imagine there's an upfront cost. Are we recouping some of that over the year and the fact that they can sell more of that?
So that's all built into the cost that they give us. So they also have to pay to have, someone come out and pick it up and bring it back to their site and package it, and, all of that and ship it to wherever it needs to go. So all of that's kind of built into their cost, and then how much they're actually making back on that. So for example, for metal, we don't pay anything to have our metal container picked up, because the cost of picking up the container and then what they're able to recoup from those materials is enough that we don't have to pay for it. But that did not appear to be the case for cardboards still.
Chris, back to one of your comments, Pelletier did include a couple of options in their contract renewal to get the price down. And we picked up on a couple of them, and one was to eliminate unlimited curbside, unlimited recycling curbside pickup. And that was another thing that the finance committee didn't like. They didn't think that we should be cutting service. And so we tried to keep the rate down, but the two things, the brush reduction and the unlimited recycling, I think those were the two that we proposed, and those weren't accepted. So they do include things in their contract if we want to get it lower. The city just didn't want to do that.
Okay. Any other discussion on resolution R190-21? If not, I'd like to go ahead and move it to a vote to either approve or disapprove. All those approve?
So we're going to keep it at 220, right?
I was just going to say, I just need to clarify, we're keeping it at the recommended, in line with the recommended?
I think at this point we have two options. One is to oppose this resolution because it can't be changed right now. And the other is to ask Gabriella to submit an amendment for a lower rate. I mean, we could do both of those things, but with this resolution, we either vote it up or vote it down.
Okay, with that, I'll do, all those who are approve the resolution, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
2 for, 2 against. To do anything after that, Dan, or?
So Ron and Diana, your stance is that you want to submit a revised recommendation.
This is not a recommendation, this is a resolution, so we can't submit anything. We could ask Gabriella to submit to propose an amendment to a lower, well, whatever rate we're comfortable with. But at this point in the meeting, we only have the option. I mean, we can move forward and ask Gabriella to do that, but we can't change this resolution.
Okay.
So, I guess I misunderstood. So we can oppose it and then have Gabriella make the amendment to a lower rate.
Yes, and actually that's what she offered to do at the last meeting, and I thought, okay. Well, if you remember, I didn't want to blindside Claudia. I thought, let's give Claudia the chance to reconsider this before she puts it in writing. Okay. But yeah.
I thought it was, sorry, I misunderstood.
Do we need to re-vote then?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that we were going to be we had to approve, but then ask for an amendment or straight up oppose it altogether. But you're saying that we would more so oppose it and then make the recommendation to Gabrielle to make the amendment.
Yes.
Correct, yeah. So
my preference would be to have a revote because I misunderstood that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let's take a vote to whether approve or disapprove the resolution R-190.21 with consideration that we would follow up with Gabriella on potentially a revised rate, proposed revised rate. All in favor? All opposed?
Aye.
No.
Yeah. Nay. Say nay. Yeah.
A nay.
Nay.
Yeah. So what do we have? I didn't hear Josh.
Nay.
Hey, okay. So 4. We don't approve this resolution as is.
As far as asking Gabriella, do we want to ask her to submit an amendment for what we discussed last month, which was the 215, or do you want to, in light of the discussion we've had today, a different amount?
Maybe 219 to stay within that limit. But still keep us in the 25% bracket.
And then I guess what are your thoughts between 215 and 219? The staff recommendation is the 220. I think there may be some flexibility to stay at 219. Do you think we can make a legitimate argument for the 215?
I'm just basing this on the conversation that RCC had with Paul Woodard and what his thoughts were on a healthy fund balance. And I understand, Misty's coming from the general fund balance, which I think is a little different. And we used to build up this fund balance to accommodate future citywide compost collection, and that hasn't happened, and we still keep building up this balance. On the other hand, I still really like the 215 that we proposed, but I'd like to, I think a compromise might be more likely to succeed as an amendment. So, 219, 218, I suspect if somebody looks at an amendment of 219 and this resolution is 220, somebody's going to say, well, it's only $1. So what's the big deal? Why mess with an amendment?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too. I was going to say 217 just to make it somewhat meaningful and somewhat of a compromise.
I'm comfortable with that. I think we have to, at some point, think about absolutes instead of percentages, because the bigger the fund balance, the bigger that percentage target is going to be if we keep it at this 25% that is somewhat arbitrary to begin with. So, it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing, and we're going to end up with this problem all the way. So I'm comfortable asking Gabriella to do 217 if you all are.
Although to Claudia's point, oddly, last year we got 44,000 applied. This year the estimate is that we'll only have 33,000 applied. And so I don't know that we're magnifying the carryover from year to year.
So is there a consensus to make the recommendation to Gabrielle at 217?
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that as well.
Okay. All right. Is there
And
anything?
Josh, sorry, I didn't hear Josh. Are you also good with that?
Sorry, you guys just said, I was just looking at this applied fund balance column in the chart. You guys said 217?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So Ron, are you contacting Gabriella about this, or how are we doing that?
I'll reach out to Gabrielle about it.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're nearly a half hour behind schedule.
Okay.
Deep discussions on things, but we'll have to find a way to make up some time.
Yeah,
think that
hopefully we can make up some time on the next two.
I think we could make some time up on the next two as well.
Let's move on to item 4C, the RCC presentation committee of a whole in January and February. Just to recap, last year we gave Phil gave a presentation to the committee of a whole, kind of give it just an update on an overview of the RCC commission, what we do, things we accomplished and things like that. And then to let them know how valuable we are to the city of Fitchburg. So I think we need to continue that. And so I corresponded with Randy Udell, one of the alder persons from the 4th district. And he's agreed that we could give a presentation sometimes in January, February to the committee of the whole. So I think we need to prepare for that presentation. And I put together some items I think we should talk about in that presentation. I'm not sure yet who wants to give that presentation, who will be doing it. I believe, did Nate give it before? Does the chairman give that presentation?
Yeah, so we last gave it in February of 2020. The chair generally takes the lead on preparing the presentation.
Okay.
But generally, we have, several people that are, that can, talk on it. And we like to have as much of the RCC at the presentation as possible. So really looking at it as an open dialogue, just to let council members, especially the new ones that, maybe aren't familiar with us, as to what we're up to, what we're doing in the community, but also get feedback from them on things that they want us to really focus in on, in terms of outreach or things that we're working on, just based on kind of the feedback that they're getting from their constituents. So,
How long the presentation is usually for?
so typically we have about an hour, and we normally present for 40 to 45 minutes of that time. And we take questions and have dialogue with counselors and the mayor for 15 to 20 minutes, and just, collect, information from them, based on kind of their feedback that they're getting. And then we bring that back, so for instance, one of the big things that came out of the February 2020 meeting was that, the O'Brien Solar Fields was, going to become a reality. And so they said, we want, you guys to help with, doing a lot of research on that, or sorry, a lot of outreach on that. And so we went forward and, I think we've written some articles on it. But, we did have the bike tour of the event. We were invited, and several of us attended the ceremony that happened at the end of July. I think we'll continue to try to, if there are, other events that MG&E puts on out there that can be open to the public, it's all been difficult because we've had the pandemic, but we've done what we could so far. And I think, I at least have that in my mind as something that we will continue to focus on, and that was based on feedback that we got from council at our last committee of the whole meeting.
Okay. I'm sharing my screen here. I've kind of put together a tentative, thanks Chris for sharing that. I put together a tentative outline of what maybe the presentation would focus on, and it kind of just follows in similar format to some of the things that were presented at the last one. I've added a few things in there, but I thought we could kind of build upon this. And I'm not sure if this is a discussion we want to have today, since we have a limited amount of time, or do you want to save it for the next November meeting?
I think we can talk at it at a, because we don't have a meeting in December, right?
Right.
So November is our last meeting of the year, and then we'll be into January, and that presentation could happen in late January. So I think it's all right for us to take a little bit of time to go through this list of. Okay. What were your additions, Ron, that you had to this?
I beg your pardon?
What were your additions that you had to this?
I just put this together here, this outline of what covering 8 different areas that we should have our discussions with the committee of the whole about. So the first one would be an overview of the commission members and staff, who we are, a little bit about ourselves. The next one, where we talk about the goals that we have for this discussion with the committee of the whole. What do we want to accomplish with you today, and go over that with them. Then go over and talk about the RCC responsibilities, what we do as a commission. Just discuss that. Then why is the RC important to the community, the Fitchburg community? To talk about that. Then have discussions on items of what the city has accomplished with regard, through the RCC commission regarding sustainability, stormwater, solid waste, recycling, things like that. We've accomplished a lot in 2021, so I think we should cover those things, with the committee as a whole. I'd like to bring out a little bit more about the Fitchburg Star articles, because I think they're very important. So I think they need to know, what we're doing in terms of making the community aware of different environmental issues and things that the community can do to help improve the environmental, situation in Fitchburg. And then talk about our current initiatives, what we're doing, and then, kind of then wrap it up with talking about, our proposed activities for 2022.
Ron, I think you've done a nice job pulling this together, I would suggest under number 4 that we include, that discussion include the community outreach, because I think that's one of the reasons that we're important to the community, and included in there, I think maybe the Fitchburg Star articles could go under that because that's part of our community outreach.
Okay,
Mhm.
And then, or that could be a B, not necessarily. It's
Okay.
its own, and then when you get down to the bottom under the current initiatives and proposed activities, I think that brings us almost full circle back to our outreach, and I think that's a perfect time to ask the council if there are things that they would like us to focus on or to work on.
okay. You,
Yeah, a couple of things to potentially consider. I think that we want to have kind of an active discussion about what a sustainability plan might mean for the community. We talked about this a lot at the last meeting with Phil leading the charge, but really kind of talking about what that could mean for the community and really trying to, kind of sell that as something that we think our community needs, and have a discussion around that as to what that might look like and what purpose.
okay, I don't know.
What,
Well, I haven't, since Gabriella's not going to be here today, she did ask me to share her comments or her staff updates. And one thing
Okay.
she did mention is that the sustainability budget, there is no budget, and then there is a budget for the sustainability plan.
There is
There is
no
not?
budget?
Budget. The sustainability plan is not included in the proposed budget.
right.
Well, then I think we need to underscore even more why we need
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think that's some of these may, be other, but I think that's a real focal point of this discussion is really trying to get the sustainability plan and
I
really
agree.
kind of making a pitch on why this is important. I think that is really kind of, I think, should be our focus of this committee of the whole meeting. We'll cover all these other topics and we can give an update. Phil could give his update also on kind of where we stand. Our, how much of the city's electricity is coming from renewable energy, which I think is another thing that they like to kind of see at this meeting, because a lot of the past things that we've signed off on as a community are based on, how much of our, energy is coming from renewable energy. So I think that's it, but I think the sustainability plan is where we want to focus. And if I haven't shared with you or you haven't seen it already, Ron, we could share the previous committee of the whole presentation with you. I think that you have it.
I do have it. Phil gave it to me.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So, but I know there's a lot of things that we need to do to update it, so. Okay.
I agree with Chris. I think that needs to be our focus on our presentation, and I think that deserves its own number, if not the biggest of all. I mean, we can address the things that the city has done in 2021 and that we've been a part of in 2021 that relate to sustainability, but the sustainability plan pulls everything together and gives us direction rather than this piecemeal stuff. I think we need to explain why it's important for the city to do that. I think it's a lot more efficient to have a plan to work toward than things that just pop up and then you work on them, which is sort of what the city and RCC have been doing.
Would it be something that we would talk about in item 8, our proposed activities for 2022 would be the main focus? I mean, the items I have in item 5A would just kind of let them know where we are, what we accomplished to date regarding sustainability.
I really want to put some emphasis on this, and I think, we can present our calendar for 2022 and just kind of hand that out briefly, but we need to make sure that we allow plenty of time to convince them that the sustainability plan, I mean, Phil can do some without funds, as he pointed out, but at some point, unless they're going to hire more staff people, we need to commit some funds to have this written.
There really needs to be a story around it, like, here's an example of an issue, and I can't really even speak to it, Claudia or Phil or, potentially somebody else within, the city staff can maybe speak to some of the challenges without having a sustainability plan. And I'm not saying that we need to come up with that right now, but we should do our research on that and understand that. And I think it probably limits us from pursuing certain grants that we don't have sustainability plans. We have all these other plans, that we sometimes, tap into to try to help us get grant funding, but, just kind of, elaborating on, some of the things that we could potentially go after if we have the sustainability plan in place. I think, kind of telling those stories and then, understanding the investment that the community would be making in this and what the benefits financially, could be to the community in terms of, those coming back in grants, more efficiency and kind of working towards our goals as a community, that type of thing. So really kind of laying out kind of what some of the current problems are and what some of the benefits will be as we, if we were to have a sustainability plan in Fitchburg.
I think you bring up a good point, Chris. I think we need to hit hard that we could be losing grant dollars. In fact, I think we have lost grant dollars because we don't have a plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, could we also do a survey of grants possible as part of the plan too, kind of further setting up things that we could be applying for, things that need to be on our calendar and radar?
I think Phil should be able to help us with that. Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of kind of, just kind of what I'm thinking generally is probably in the area of 10 slides on sustainability plan and, typically 1 to 2 slides on, many of these other things.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, and we normally end up somewhere between 30 and 35 slides. So just to kind of, I think that really kind of gets at our emphasis with the sustainability plan.
We only need 1 slide on RCC responsibilities. That can and that can be a carryover from the last presentation. It's just from the website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you can use a lot of our old slides for some of these other things. We'll update, and make them current, of course. But the brunt of our work will be on these sustainability plan slides.
Okay.
Ron, you don't need to feel like you need to come up with this on your own. We're happy to help. And I'm thinking that with Phil's assistance, we should be able to come up with a lot of discussion to a lot of meat for the sustainability plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Ron, I'm happy to kind of go back and forth with you and Phil, just trying to kind of chip away at that in between, the next meeting and get a start on it. I'd rather have this in pretty good shape by year end instead of, turning the calendar year and having to push to get this done.
Would you and Diane and Phil be okay with trying to work on those 10 slides then?
Sure.
Yeah. I could take what we have from the previous presentation and work with it to fit in with the other ones.
Yeah,
I'm happy to help with like copywriting and editing. I don't feel like I'm at a place of knowledge yet where I can populate a whole lot, but I'm happy to help in other ways.
Well, you could be a good reviewer.
Yep.
So, and I could do that if you guys could work on the sustainability plan, because I agree with you. This is a very strong program that we need to push through the city.
It might be helpful, Ron, to request February rather than January, usually, especially since we don't have a meeting in December.
Okay.
And by that time, we'll have December closed out. We'll have the calendar done. We'll have the 2021, what do we call that, report? should be just about completed, which will come in handy,
Mhm.
the annual report.
Yep. Okay. All right, I'll follow up with Randy on this, see if we can shoot for the February timeframe. Claudia, is there a certain date that they have these meetings on, or?
It's the third Wednesday of every month, but
Wednesday? Okay.
I can double check that real quick. The fourth Wednesday of every month.
Oh, 4th?
Yeah,
Okay,
fourth, sorry.
so it'll be the end of February then.
Sounds about right. We gave our last one at the very end of February 2020.
Okay, good. All right, any other discussion on this topic? I think we have some action items for Claudia. I don't know if you're taking track of those like Phil's been doing.
So what I had written down, let's see, can Phil put together grants that we might be eligible for if we had a sustainability plan? That was the only action item that I had written down. Was there another one?
Well, Phil,
Okay.
Diane, and Chris are gonna work on I don't know if you want to, we include that as an action item. We'll work on pulling together a sustainability plan, part of the presentation, and I'll work on the other parts.
For who to put that together? Sorry.
I'll work on the other parts of the presentation while Phil, Chris, and Diane work on the sustainability plan, part of the presentation.
Okay.
You don't, Claudia, you don't need the action item about the grants. Chris and I will cover that with Phil.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks everyone on that discussion. All right. Next item on the new business is item 4D, 2022 RCC projects. So I assume this is where we talk about things that we want as a commission to focus on for the next year for our initiatives. And I assume this is kind of an open pre-fall discussion about that. I mean, there's a couple of things that I would like to for the commission to consider next year to look at. And one is the invasive species that we've talked about before, joining and working with the Southern Council on Invasive Species here in Dane County to identify potentially how we can evaluate and I guess work with to get rid of the invasive species on Dane County, at least in the city of Fitchburg properties that we own, particularly the stormwater facilities and things like that in our parks. So to work with them to find out how we can do that. And the other one that I kind of like to see is, and I don't know if it's possible, but it is to develop something called a Dark Sky Ordinance, or pursue something to that effect, where that basically, we want to be able to enjoy the night sky that we have in Fitchburg by reducing the types of lighting that we have in the city, redirecting lighting sources, find ways that we can conserve our lighting, I guess the amount of energy that it's used to take the city up in areas, and what we can do to reduce that, and which in turn will reduce the amount of light getting into the sky. And the reason it's important, but a lot of it's important because there's people who like to look at the night sky. There's an aesthetic reason for that, but also there's a wildlife reason for it too, because a lot of migrating birds moving through spring and fall time get confused with all the lights, night lights that they see. And so if we can reduce the number of lights shining up into the sky, that would be great. I mean, a lot of the cities, the city of Pittsburgh actually just approved an ordinance, and I could share that with people for a dark sky ordinance that for their city. So if there's something we can do for the city of Fitchburg, that would be great. I mean, I've been in the Madison Astronomical Society would be more than happy to give a presentation on that, what's being done around the country, and particularly on the Pittsburgh one. From what I understand, they tried to approach the city of Madison about it, and they kind of got laughed at. So I think it's a very serious something. I don't think it's a laughing matter. I think it's something serious that we should consider, because it gets back to energy usage, the types of light, protecting our environment and making the night sky more visible for our citizens.
Ron, you might, if you're inclined, you might want to lay the groundwork for this by writing an article in the Star
Okay,
And also, that organization that talked to Madison, I don't know how recently they talked to Madison, but I would think that the current administration would be much more receptive to something like that if they want to approach them again. I like that idea. That's not something that we've talked about before.
okay,
Yeah, those are two areas that, obviously the night sky is something we've never hit before. I think in Fitchburg, obviously, finding a way to to sell that, we have to also sell that the safety is not, compromised at all. So that's a big part of it, especially in Fitchburg. But I do like the idea quite a bit because it is, a unique topic for us. Even the other topic that you mentioned is something that, I think we've hit on, but I don't think we've put, we haven't had a community event on it before. And I think there is a lot of, I know there's a specific part of our community that knows that, but there's, a larger part of our community that doesn't know kind of those invasive
yeah.
species.
Well, hopefully the goal would be to sign that memorandum of agreement with that group like DNR has done. So
Can you put that on our agenda for November, please, Ron?
yeah,
Also, I think
which
when
one?
we,
The species.
yes,
Okay,
I think when we had that presentation with them, we zeroed in on a good month for them to come and do the walkthrough. I can't remember if it was April or June, but I think we definitely need that on our calendar for next year.
okay.
Mhm.
The
I
other
think we were thinking that might be a good Earth Month activity.
Yeah.
So
April.
April.
The other thing, the things that that I've been thinking that could add to this is the solar field tour. I'm hoping that this pandemic will finally be past us next year. And I'd like to, if MG&E is agreeable, to invite the public, to host a tour. That was pretty interesting, the one that that we attended, the open house. I guess it's not really a tour, but and I'd like to get the BYOB, bring your own bag event started again. Now that for a while, you couldn't bring your own grocery bags into the stores because of the concerns about COVID. And now that you get out of that habit, I even find myself it's not habit for me to grab those bags. I have to walk back out to my car and get them. So
Yeah, you can bring them in now.
yeah, you can, and you have been able to for a couple of months, but I still have not I've not gotten myself back into that. So I'd like to hopefully have another BYOB event.
Okay,
I'd love to look into either setting up some volunteering or looking at if we could be applying for independent funding for equitable tree planting. So there's been a couple of studies recently that have looked at the fact that lower income and high density areas have far less tree cover, and it leads to much more drastic effects of warming climate on the residents in that area. The buildings are less shaded. The general area is much hotter than areas that have a lot of tree cover. And so I think, with Fitchburg having the opportunity to have regions in the city that could benefit from stuff like that, looking at, if there's ways to partner with the city where we can, people could volunteer time to help plant those trees on a weekend, or if there's grants we can be looking for that would be specifically dedicated to tree planting in lower income or high density areas. I think that would be one of the most solid, I feel like, research-backed ways that we could start to look at least a little bit of climate justice, and kind of equitable climate advancement in coming out of this group.
yeah. It sounds like something we could engage.
I think
person
the
to-
tree. I
Go ahead.
think the tree advisory committee is already looking into that. I seem to remember them talking about that when we had that tree diversity event this spring. We could certainly partner with them, but I think they're already working on that. That's a good idea, Josh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that.
And Gabrielle is on that committee, so you could potentially check with her and see what's happening on that front. She could give you the kind of high level idea, but if you do kind of those conversations say that we could, they say that they could really use an event. We've teamed with them before, and we could team again to do an outreach event, related to that. a couple things that I would like to see next year is get back to. So we haven't, we used to do a lot of multifamily recycling events. So we go into those, and I had to I had to turn around at a Fitchburg apartment complex a couple of weeks ago, and I drove in, and I just happened to get a big glance of kind of the trash and recycling area, and I was like, and I was just blown away by, now granted this was probably, in August, and it's a time where there's a lot of moving that happens, but I just saw everything overflowing out of those trash containers and recycling containers. And I know in the past we had a pretty good run for a few years of trying to really kind of get more recycling programs going in the multifamily residents. I'd like to kind of pick up that initiative again and see if we can make some headway on that front in Fitchburg.
Okay.
Also, I'd love to see us do the Build a Bat House event again. And that's not maybe a focus area. That's more of a specific ask on an event. But that was one of our most popular events that we had. And I don't see too many bat houses around Fitchburg. I think we could use another event like that.
The other
Pretty
thing I was gonna
ambitious.
suggest. What's that, Diane?
I said it's a pretty ambitious agenda.
Yes, it is.
I was going to even add one more in the fact that Fitchburg would be eligible for a number of the grant programs that I help with through the county. And if we wanted to explore applying for native planting or educational materials or things of that nature, that as a municipality, Fitchburg is eligible for a lot of those, and that we could apply for that. That's now a joint program. So it's the one application for kind of a number of funding mechanisms through the county. And that might be something we want to evaluate in terms of submitting an idea or, a proposal to that.
Where does the native planting, does it need to be on public property?
I would think so. If it's I forget if we require a municipality. I think we require that a municipality would have to be on public property, but we've gotten requests from like schools, which I guess is also public property. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it has to be, but it's been on like school property before. It's been in some stormwater areas, or just we've gotten stuff, a lot of parks development, Friends of Parks groups will submit a grant for different plantings or different renovations or whatever. So yeah, it's pretty much all various types of public land.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to do a bicycle tour of that, to areas where this has been done, like the new, Terra Vesta, where they have all those native plantings out there for in the medians and the stormwater, other potentially residential areas that have done that. Or, I think it'd be kind of cool to do a bicycle or just a tour around that, even around the city of Fitchburg, our building areas, all the native plantings that we have out there.
Claudia, you don't call it a culvert. The thing of the Sherrill stormwater that you're going to enlarge, not the infrastructure, but the ditch.
Yeah.
Will that be planted?
So it will probably be planted with, there's an agricole seed mix called swale seed mix. And those are native plantings. I mean, we haven't picked out the seed mix, but I imagine that's what we would propose for that area.
So maybe we could use grant money for that?
So I think the grant that Josh is talking about is actually for plant plugs, not for seed mixes. And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I think we've allowed people to buy seed in the past. I know one of the perks, so the one that specifically that I said on, we want to see pollinators as much as possible. And I forget if some of the swale mixes have more. I mean, agricole is a very common suggestion for us. That's what Plant Dane uses for their seed sourcing. That's what they use to source their seedlings in the spring too. And so I know we partner with them a lot. I think if there was an opportunity to buy a mix that offered flowering natives, and especially ones that might cycle through a longer duration of the summer, we've definitely, covered the seed cost and then the cost of installation in the past as well.
Okay, I'll follow up with you just to make sure I'm understanding which grant that is, because I think that might be different from the one that I'm familiar with, but I'll follow up with you offline on that.
Sure.
Okay, any more discussion on this topic? These are all great ideas, and hopefully, we can make these things happen next year.
Yeah, no,
Claudia,
good
just a reminder,
discussion.
Phil sits on the committee too. So if you're talking to him about this stuff for other reasons, happy to follow up with it, but just wanted to put that back out there again.
And I think we need to get some input, from Kim as well, what her interest would be too, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we kind of had a little bit of, old experienced vets and myself and Diane giving some recommendations, but really appreciate Ron and Josh, both of your fresh ideas and new recommendations to areas that you have particular expertise in. That's really, nice to kind of expand us kind of doing. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground over the years, but, this even kind of expands us into some new areas that we haven't, hit as much over all of our time doing all the sustainability work in Fitchburg. So really appreciate your new ideas that you're bringing to the table.
Okay, with that, let's move on to item 4E, the draft 22 solid waste collection calendar. You're up, Claudia.
So we're like 10 minutes behind, just as a heads up. We've made up some ground.
And hopefully we can make up more ground here. So in the packet, I went ahead and put together a proposed draft. Oh, let me share my screen.
It looks great, Claudia.
Okay, awesome. Well, I was just going to say, if anyone has any comments, if they want any of these dates moved around a little bit, we can talk about that now. Basically, I tried to do every other week for these pickups for the first 2 months, and then staggered it to every 3 weeks after that until we get to October, and then it's every other week again until mid-November. So that was kind of the thought process here, very similar to what we did last year. And
I like the more pickups in October because that's when everybody's out raking leaves and doing everything.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to try again.
Yeah, I think it looks really good.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Any comments on this? Any other comments on this?
No, but it reminded me that I gotta put my sign out on the curb to keep your leaves out of the streets.
Oh
yeah.
I saw one today when I was going through a pretty mature neighborhood over by Cherokee Heights Middle School. I saw one of those signs and I'm like, oh, I got to get my sign up, because
there you go.
In the last week, I've seen 2 people blowing leaves out into the street, when I've been driving, and, just always need to kind of keep that educational piece up there that, that's driving the phosphorus levels up in our lakes.
Are there more signs available out there? Mine got stolen last week.
We need to.
There are signs available. I thought I had put that in the Fitchburg Star. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's next month or this month that it's getting published.
I didn't see the latest one.
But we do have signs, additional signs. So Ron, I was going to say send me an email, but I'll just take it as a follow-up too.
Where do you get them at?
Sorry, what was that?
Where do you get the signs at?
So we get the signs from Dane County, MamSwap. They create signs for different municipalities. So we have a special one that says City of Fitchburg, but I see a lot of people also get the signs directly from Dane County, in which case it's a very similar message, but it has like the Dane County logo instead of the Fitchburg logo. And it's a slightly different wording on the message if you get that version of the sign.
Okay. So where can I pick up a sign then?
I would definitely take one.
Okay, well, why don't you guys follow up with me in an email and we can just bring it to your door. during
Okay.
work hours sometime, and we'll just drop it off.
I think they did that last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Claudia, we have some lawn service companies operating in Fitchburg who are blowing their lawn cuttings and leaves into the street. So what would you suggest about that?
Hmm.
I have to look. I have to look to verify if that's breaking an ordinance. If you see that, if you can send me the information about the lawn company and then when it happened and the time and a license plate and a date, time, license plate, and a photo if you're able to, that would enable me, if it is against our ordinance, to follow up with a citation. And if it's not against our ordinance, then I can at least follow up with a letter letting them know that they should.
I see that also in our neighborhood, our subdivision as well, so.
Yeah, so if you see that, go ahead and make a note of who's doing that, which, you know, a lot of times on the side of the vehicle, it will say what company they're working with. Then we can at least send them a letter, if not a citation.
Okay, I can do that easily because I've seen this particular fellow do it twice now. And I've been tempted to go up to him and I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to do a personal confrontation.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
I'll be happy to do that. Also,
All right, great.
did we make any progress on mailing this calendar to new residents, you know, as part of the, I think you were going to look to see if we could do that as an attachment to the, I think the city clerk sent something out.
So are you talking about with the utility bill?
Yes, no. We talked about we talked about, I guess this is part of it. We talked about getting recycling information to new residents. And I think we added this recycling calendar as a possible attachment if they can send out attachments. We still have, we have a lot of new residents in Fitchburg this year. There's been a lot of turnover at houses and people are putting out yard waste and brush every week.
Yeah, so I believe I did give this to them. It's an email. It's not a hard copy that's mailed.
Yeah.
It's an email.
Yeah.
It would be an attachment to that email. I know that I did have that discussion. I can just follow up and double check that it's made it into the process, you know, because sometimes you have a discussion and you think you're doing it differently and then you're not. So I can just double check that.
Diane, I will say
Thank
from
you.
experience, Pelletari's also been having been struggling to pick up all the brush in a given week. And so I think there's potentially some spillover as well from people putting stuff out on the right week and stuff lingering.
Well, I appreciate that information, Josh, but this has been going on, at least since June, and it's every week. It's not, I know when Pelletary goes by to pick up, and I mean, they're putting brush, they're not just putting brush out, they're putting yard waste out all the time. I think they must have moved from Madison because Madison doesn't have a scheduled pickup for that. But anyway, I appreciate your thoughts on that.
Claudia, is this calendar included?
That one I might actually do a confrontation on.
Claudia, is this calendar included in the recycling? I mean, in the our utility bill from Fitchburg?
So it's not included in the utility bill. I know that there's a link to our recycling page there. A hard copy will be available in the Fitchburg Star, which most residents should be getting. And then you can cut out, you know, the calendar from the Fitchburg Star and put it on your refrigerator. And then another thing I was going to hopefully request from the Fitchburg Star again this year, they were able to accommodate it last year, though they did give me 1,000 caveats that it might not work out. But last year it did work out, that on the back of the recycling calendar, we had just another ad that we paid for that gave some information about recycling. So that's what this was meant to be. This is I'm going to request that it's on the back of the calendar. So if people do cut it out, it shows up on the back of the calendar. That's never guaranteed, but I still think it's useful to pay for the ad, even if it doesn't show up on the back of the calendar. And basically what we did here is, as part of, when you go onto the website, you can look up how to appropriately recycle or dispose of various items through our Recollect app. And the app actually collects information on what's being, what people are searching for. So for the city of Fitchburg, these are the things that people are searching for most often. So that's kind of how we put together this list of top 5 things that residents want to know. And I was just wondering if anyone had, and if you have copy edit comments, if you want to just send that to me kind of offline, or any other comments on this, let me know before we publish it.
Where do you get a
I think
plastic?
it's a great idea.
Yeah, I do too. Where do you get a plastic bag to put a mattress in?
You can buy that from just Home Depot.
Oh, you can?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Well, I thought the city had a supply of those.
So we have the reusable leaf bags. And then I know we talked about adding that.
For the mattresses?
I know we talked about adding that to the budget for mattresses, but I don't believe that was ever added. So we don't have that supply. I know that was a discussion.
Okay. I just never seen the bags. When I get bags at Home Depot, but I never thought they existed. So would have never been looking for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we move on to agenda item number 5?
Rick had something.
Oh, go ahead.
So, sorry, Ron, just one thing on that. I think that that extra little, 8.5 by 11 ad is awesome, Claudia. One thing that the Star could do, if you wanted to, there's obviously a charge for it, but you could actually have them print 8.5 by 11, the recycling, so that people don't have to cut it out. It would get more people actually seeing that, because it can be a little bit of a nuisance because it'll drop out of the paper when you unfold it, but sometimes that actually might be a benefit. That's something too that RCC could consider encouraging for future years if it doesn't fit within this year's budget. But I suspect
Have it as
that
an insert? Have it as an insert? Is that what you're suggesting, Rick?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that was an option. So I'll definitely look into that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Rick. I think that's a great idea. Okay, we're ready to move the agenda item to old business. Item 5A, accepting applications for new RCC member. You have an update on that, Claudia?
Yes, sorry, just writing down a couple notes here. So we did reach out to folks who had an application on file anytime in the last year. And unfortunately at this time, the folks who had an application on file were not interested in joining RCC at this time. So we are opening that back up to anyone who would like to apply to be in the RCC. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. And if you know anyone who might be interested in applying, please go ahead and let them know that there's an opportunity here. And I know Lisa said she would put that on our Facebook page and a couple other pages as well. So we'll be working on trying to get the word out on this end as well.
Okay, I think Gabriella said there was one person that they have an application for right now.
Last I checked, we had reached out to everyone who we had an application for, but she might have more recent information than me.
She says we received a couple applications so far, so.
Yeah, so last I checked with Lisa, which was just, I believe, a week and a half ago, she said that we didn't have any viable applications on file and that we had reached out to folks.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
the latest that I know.
Right, thank you. Well, next item, agenda 5B, clean sweep, October 23rd. Phil's not here today, so I assume you would be covering for him, Claudia.
Yes, and I forgot to look up this information.
That's the Dane
Is that-
County clean sweep.
Does anyone know the date and time? I don't have it handy, I'm sorry.
It's on my birthday, October
the-
23rd, so I noticed that.
Okay,
There was something about it last meeting.
It's over by the, I know it's over by Oak Bank in that parking lot over on the other side of Oak Bank, and it costs $10 per carload. You can fill up your whole carload. He encouraged us to get tickets in advance because I guess they're only accommodating a certain number of items or a certain number of cars. I'm not exactly sure, but you can go the day of. I can't remember the hours, but I know it's in the morning.
Looks like 8 a.m. to 12 based on the meeting minutes.
Yeah, just looking in the new Fitchburg Star, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., 55955 McKee Road, behind the Oak Bank in the parking lot.
And there's a link on Fitchburg's webpage, and also apparently Fitchburg's information doesn't note this, but they're not accepting batteries.
Okay.
thanks, everyone.
But we do accept the batteries at the electronics.
Exactly, thanks.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
Do we want to, I mean, is that something that City of Fitchburg will kind of, I mean, I assume there's information in the Fitchburg Star on that event. I didn't look at the most recent version.
Yeah,
To see if it was in there.
It's just on the Fitchburg calendar section.
Okay.
So I don't see a write-up anywhere.
Well,
So,
but
I mean,
the article in, Phil's article in September talked about it and gave information on it. So it's been in the Star.
so people generally, come out, pretty well for these. Sometimes we're kind of, by the people that are actually putting the program on. So there's like a partnership between Dane County Ripple Effects and MAM Swap. So hopefully their networks have, kind of reached out and are doing some outreach in the areas. Sometimes in the past, we've been very surprised at our electronics recycling events. We're like, how did so many people find out about this event? And a lot of them are, they had a direct mailing from like the electronics recycler. So, maybe they're doing something similar. Generally, people in Fitchburg find out about these events and attend them, pretty well. So I'm not too worried about attendance. But I just want to make sure that, we do, so we haven't had one of these in Fitchburg for a while. We do kind of make it known to people that this event is upcoming. So if the city,
It's not just Fitchburg, it's open to any resident,
Okay.
anybody.
Yeah, in Dane County.
Yep.
so yeah, I'm sure it'll be well attended. So maybe we don't need to put too much effort into doing our
No.
own marketing, and maybe a very small amount of effort for Fitchburg residents on the city page.
But it is in Fitchburg, so, it
Yeah.
would be great to make sure Fitchburg residents are aware that this
Yeah.
is available. So, and I know that is something that Phil is working on,
Okay.
getting the word out. So.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. All right, next on the item is item 5C, the Fall Cycling Day event. Claudia, you've been talking about potentially for the future events, changing the location over to McGee Park.
Yeah, so I just wanted to float this by RCC to see what your initial gut reaction was to this. As you know, in the past, we've had our Recycling Day event at the City Hall campus, and there are various entrances and exits, and it's a little bit difficult to make sure that we have space for appropriate amounts of car queuing. Especially if some of the lines get backed up. We haven't had a problem with electronics backing up in a couple of years, because I know one year we had really bad backups for electronics, and then after that, Resource Solutions sent much more people after that to make sure that that line kept on flowing. But we have had problems with the shredding station, and I think at least part of that is because we just don't have a very good spot for it. there's just a smaller area for a queue there. And that's something that I had a meeting internally with police and the rec center and the senior center and the city administrator, just to kind of talk about, like, you know, what are the needs from these parking areas? What can we move? What can we not move? And it really doesn't seem like there's a whole lot. So for example, for this like November meeting, we might be able to put it in front of the senior center, but that's just because there happens to be no senior center event that day. And I'm not sure if that's something that we want to gamble on, you know, having, because in my mind, we would want a consistent layout. And we don't want to change it from year to year based on who's having events when, so that people really know where things are, and they, you know, we can have like a consistent traffic flow and people can learn the traffic pattern, and we can do that. And it sounds like City Hall, I get the feeling we're outgrowing that space, and I get the feeling that it's not going to be easy to do a different setup. So one idea that came up was potentially using McGaw, the parking lot in McGaw instead. The pros, I think, are there's a really long place for, and I'll just share my screen.
Yeah.
McGaw or
This is-
McKee Park, real quick, Claudia?
McGaw.
Okay.
So one really nice thing about McGaw is that they do have a really long drive aisle. So that would be nice in terms of queuing cars and making sure we're not impacting traffic. They also have 2 separate parking areas. So we could do electronics in one area and paper in a different area and kind of have their own separate little queues. Drawbacks would be, I think we would still want to have med drop at City Hall. We'd have to look into if we can do a remote med drop collection, because right now it's at a permanent box location. And we have to see what it would entail to bring that remote, because there are requirements for med drop. You can't just collect medicine from people and put it in your truck and then bring it back to City Hall. That's not acceptable. And then the other big drawback is that we wouldn't be able to schedule this in October. But in talking to Scott, the Parks Director, April would be fine, anytime in April, which is when we typically have this event, and then anytime in November would be fine. So we would have to be willing to have this event in basically the first week of November. And I know we typically do try to aim for October rather than at November, but we've had the last couple in November, and it hasn't seemed like a big deal. So anyway, those were my thoughts. I was wondering how people felt about testing this out for future events.
I mean, I think McGaw.
Patty, we've also
Okay.
we've also had this event in September.
Okay.
It kind of, the date sort of depended on when there was a home football game, because we tried to avoid home football games. When you get, well, early November might be okay, but any later it starts to get a little bit cold not to be wearing gloves, and you can't, it's difficult depending on what you're handling to do it with gloves on. 2 things that I see with this one, the driveway in is also the exit for people. So if there's a lot of traffic, I mean, there's going to be 2-way traffic going on there, whereas at City Hall, it's not that way. It kind of just, they don't have to go out the same way they came in. The other disadvantage, and I really appreciate you thinking about this and coming up with options, but we're moving it further away from the center of the city. We used to do this event over in the Oak Bank parking lot. So we've moved away from, I think it's not as centrally located, and I'm afraid we're going in the wrong direction for folks. And I hate, I don't think we can base anything on what happens this this year in November because we haven't had it for so long. I think it's just going to be crazy anyway, but people are used to it now. I mean, we tried to switch things around and we moved the electronics from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot, and that alleviated the lines for the lower parking lot and created lines for the shredding. But people are used to that location, and I hate to move it around again. And I'm tempted to say, let's see how this year goes, but I know this year is not going to be a good year to base a decision on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just a couple of thoughts, and I think those are all really valid points. So it does look like this drive aisle is 22 feet wide, so that should be sufficient for two-way traffic here. So I'm less concerned about that. It's not, you know, really people shouldn't be parking on the side of this, but that shouldn't be an issue. And I definitely hear what you're saying with this being farther from the center of town. But if we're just talking about relatively, you know, compared to City Hall, it's, you know, less than a mile east. So.
Yeah, one of the concern about this site is the new pickleball court. So it's a very attractive facility, very popular right now. So you kind of almost Nick's playing pickleball during that time period. So
yeah, and it would be something that we would have to put up. It would be similar to City Hall. We would put up a sign that week that says we're having an event this upcoming weekend at this date and this time, just so people are aware. And then hopefully they will see that and they will potentially not plan to come here for something else. But in terms of scheduled events, what Scott said is that, I mean, the main reason why we can't have this in October at this location is because Little League foot or softball and other events that get scheduled here. So at least we wouldn't have a conflict with scheduled events if we went with the first week of November. But yes, it would definitely impact people who are just coming out wanting to use the facilities that day for that 3-hour window.
just to let people know, I play pickleball. There's a hard contingent of people out there who play in all types of weather. I mean,
Sure, yeah.
It's called the Polar Bear Club, and they're out there playing in 0-degree temperature, any court they can find. So it's a pretty popular sport here in the Madison area.
All right, well, if folks are feeling pretty happy with the current location and the current setup, you know, I was just reflecting on the last couple of times that we've had it, and I was thinking it might not be ideal. So just wanted to throw it out there, but if we feel more comfortable just continuing with City Hall as the location, you know, that's fine too.
Okay.
Why don't we just keep this on the back burner, and if City Hall campus becomes a problem in the future, not this year, but maybe next, then we can always bring this back up.
Yeah, I mean, Fitchburg is growing, so it could be an issue in the future. So
Sure.
okay.
Thank you.
All right,
For having
Claudia.
them every 6 months, it might be, you know, a good idea to kind of move them around different parts of town. So
Yeah.
haven't we had it before in kind of a spring and a fall one? Or am
We
I
have.
just thinking? Okay. So, you know, in that situation, I think it might be valid as well, but I do agree with Diane's points on it, particularly the location side of it, you know, and, you know, wondering if there's somewhere, you know, further out to the west in Fitchburg that we could look at, you know, is it possible? There is a lot of asphalt parking lot space at the place where the clean sweep event's going to be. You know, is it possible to have both of those at that location potentially? The consideration as
We've
well.
had it there.
I know we
we had
used
the
to have-
shredding event there.
I know you've had the shredding. I don't know that we've had them both there at the same time, shredding and electronic.
No.
But, you know, just looking for those options to, you know, I think it's a good idea to think about moving it around occasionally. And, you know, that's how you kind of get to different parts and different people within the community. So thanks for all the input on that. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rick.
You know, the other thing to keep in mind is you don't have to do them at the same location. I always felt that worked better to actually have different locations, just kind of spread that out. And it really, I thought, the nice thing about having it at Oak Bank historically is that they'd actually promote it with their customers, even though obviously we were, the city was subsidizing the costs. I mean, it was nice to actually have Oak Bank encourage, primarily their customers to do that. And they also help provide, a little bit of, there could be advertising associated with that. And so there's some, they ended up being a pretty nice partner historically with the Shred Day event.
So Rick, just a little bit of history on that. So we would pay Oak Bank to use their space, is that correct? Or
No,
no?
okay. It'd be a cost. I mean, there'd be a cost neutral. There were no cost. I mean, they would provide the site, and then we'd put together the advertising. They'd make it available, there at the Oak Bank, maybe a couple, 2 to 3 weeks in advance of the event, and then obviously we'd promote it. The city would promote it through the Fitchburg Star and website and things like that. And then generally, we were, because of some of the issues with having the electronic recycling and polystyrene events and shredding at City Hall and or the Public Works facility, then I had kind of gone away from doing city spots and then utilizing Surplus IT's warehouse just north of Fitchburg in Madison for the electronic recycling event, and that I felt that worked out really well. And then we generally would have Oak Bank for the Shred Day event.
Okay. One thing to keep in mind over to Oak Bank is that we might have competition, because I was totally surprised last week how large the Cars and Coffee event has been going. It used to be 10 or 12 cars. Now it's like 50 something cars around there. It's unbelievable.
That's only on, is that Saturdays or Sundays though?
Sunday mornings.
Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Sunday mornings at like 9 or something.
Yeah.
The feedback that I got at the Shred event from people who participated, they appreciated the fact that we kept it at the same event. And we had, for a while, we were kind of moving things from one year, it would be in one place, and another year. And when we had like the Surplus IT location and Medrop and the Shred event at a separate place, we had a lot of people going in circles and not finding where they wanted to go, and a little bit of frustration from that. And the comments that I got the last couple of years that I worked at the Shred event, people were happy. They knew this is where it's been. They knew where they were going. So I agree that it would be nice to have it at different locations to make it more convenient for other people, but people seem to like the predictability. They know where they're going. They know what to do when they get there. It's not as confusing.
Okay. Good. All right. Thank you, everyone.
And I will say that I'll just echo that when people call asking for information on this event, they already know it's at City Hall. They just need the date. Sorry, one second.
Okay. Let's move on to item 5D, Fitchburg Star articles. Diane, I guess I already know what I'm going to write up in the future. So
Chris's article, I haven't read the Star yet. It just came, I think.
It's in the Star. Yeah, this would.
Yeah, I think it came on Saturday. I haven't had a chance to read it, but Chris's article should be in. And I think, Ron, you're up for November. So
right. Yeah. I'm going to be getting it out for people to review next week. So.
Okay. And either I neglected to go back and look. I thought, like I said, last meeting, I thought Gabriella said she was doing something for December, but I forgot to go back and check up on that. So I'm just going to, if it's not there, if it's there, I'll send you a reminder. If it's not there, I'll come up with an article.
Okay.
Josh, have you gotten a chance to write an article yet?
I haven't. I was going to offer to take whatever the next open month is.
Oh, really? Well, if you want to do December, or would you like to do January?
I would probably prefer January, but could do December if needed.
Let's count on you for January. Do you have a topic?
No, but I did see the archive that was just put out, so I want to check that first, and then I can pitch one or two that haven't been touched in a while.
Good, great.
Diane, I could do February, the Dark Sky.
Holy
Sounds-
cow.
All
We,
right.
we're way out
wanna
there.
Anybody want to speak up for March?
I think you're pushing it, Diane.
Perfect, thank you, guys.
Okay, let's see here. Anything else? Rick, did you have something?
Sorry, one thing on that, it might be beneficial to consider, Josh, if you wanted to talk about native plantings and also, grant opportunities for, there's Dane is also starts to come out in February. So if you switched with Ron on Dark Sky, because the Dark Sky to me might be a nice January topic, but certainly the February would be a great time to promote native vegetation, and also, by then information on Dane should be available. People could actually start registering for that, because one of the issues with Dane is you have to register for those plants right away. I think in generally by the end of February, in order to get the orders to get the deliveries. So promotion on that would be great, along with the other information that you're doing through Dane County opportunities.
Yeah, I can answer. That is more in line with and that would be, I think that next month, I think March, the full grant mechanism would potentially open. And so I could even do an article just about speaking to the various grant types that are open, and then emphasizing kind of the other, the results or whatever. Yeah, that'd be great.
I think that times out well with our committee of the whole meeting too, that we're going to be doing that at the end of February. So this article would come out a couple weeks earlier, talking a little bit about grants, opportunities. So that kind of plays into that as well.
Okay, I can switch. That's no problem.
Good, thank you. Remember that, Josh, remember that this needs to be a persuasive viewpoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Good, thank you.
All right.
Good idea, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. Okay, we're kind of ahead of schedule, so that's good. So item 5E, Chris, do you want to give us an update on the Aldo Leopold and the recycling initiative update?
Yeah, so we've gotten a lot of the equipment in to kind of set up our customized setup for recycling in the hallways. So that's what Leopold wants to try to do. We're working on trying to get some feedback for that. So I expect, Diane, you might see a meeting invite for the 18th, like a week from today, potentially coming out. Sustained Dane's supposed to be sending that out. I haven't seen it myself quite yet. But kind of the exciting thing that'll be happening between now and Thanksgiving is we're going to start with the first 5 schools and starting to look at food waste. So Leopold will be one of those schools where we're starting to evaluate what the quantities of food waste are and to do some waste audits. So this is part of the World Wildlife Fund grant. So Sustained Dane will be leading those, but just kind of with the past experience that we have from doing a waste audit at Leopold and also at Cherokee, we're going to be, kind of helping them get set up the right way. Probably going to be attacking like a grade level. So like it would be like looking at 3rd grade, because there's going to be several different audits that they're going to be doing at these schools. So I think, the idea would be to have 3rd graders and then have, somebody from each classroom bring the waste out, and then we would have to weigh it outdoors to make it happen, because we can't go into the schools. But it's kind of exciting to get some things going in being interactive with the schools on, waste, composting, and recycling. So, by the sounds of it, we're one of the few areas in the country that are, trying to do stuff in this kind of, during this pandemic time. So, and I think that some of these things will be of benefit even past post-pandemic. First, many of the classrooms are going to more breakfast in the classrooms. And so I'm thinking that kind of the different options that we're evaluating will be valuable to be spread around, both around Dane County, but also across the state and potentially across the country. So pretty exciting stuff. I think good things are happening there. I don't know that there's
Chris,
anything else.
when do you think that waste audit is going to be?
It's going to be scheduled sometime between now and probably before that week of Thanksgiving. So it's going to happen
Oh,
you know,
soon.
pretty soon. I would say they could start as early as late October, but it's going to be probably pretty heavy in the first half of November.
Good.
We're going to get out to some other schools and kind of see what's going on at other schools and see, kind of what's happening across different schools with regards to food waste and recycling, and just have a little bit more to draw upon than all of our experiences at Leopold.
Great.
That's all I've got.
Okay, great, Chris. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, item 6, council update. As you know, Gabrielle couldn't make it tonight. She had a delay in her flight schedule, so hopefully she'll make it home tonight at some point. Hopefully she's not on a Southwest flight. I'll read you her minutes. I read them earlier today now, and now as I read the first one, I go, oh, why did I mention that earlier? So her first comment is on item 4B, the solid waste rates.
Oh,
So
what's she got?
This was discussed during the Finance Committee budget presentations. I asked the possibility of dipping further into the fund balance as a strategy to avoid a rate increase. Finance Director Misty Dodge said that the fund balance policy for the city of Fitchburg is to keep it between 15 and 25%. This budget brings the fund balance down to 25%. It is possible to go below 25%, but that is unusual for the city of Fitchburg. This can be done through council action. So it sounds like there's some way we could get it down to that, maybe the 215 number.
Why don't we stick with the 217 that we mentioned? It looks like a compromise, and it sounds like Claudia, it sounds like Gabriella's opening the door.
Yeah.
To do that. Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Is everybody
Yep.
okay with that?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Her council report. Okay. Item 1, the 2022 mayor's proposed budget has been released, and Finance Committee held budget presentations on October 5th and October 6th last week to gather more information from department heads. You can download the document on the city website and see the meetings on the city YouTube channel. The best way to navigate a document is by downloading the PDF and using bookmarks. More advice on how to navigate the document can be found on the most recent blog post on my website. A few highlights for RCC. The department details documents are especially useful. Look closely at the significant budget changes from 2021 to 2022 section. I encourage you to check out the following sections. Those sections include the planning department, sustainability/H&I division, starting on page 114. And I'll share Claudia's, Gabriella's email with everyone at the end of the meeting tonight. Public Works Department, refuse division, starting on page 180. Public Works Department, Stormwater Division, starting on page 199. A few items to point out. The sustainability plan is not included in the proposed budget. The solid waste fees have been planned 5% increase. A compost screener is included. A license plate recognition camera for the recycling drop-off site is included. An increase in stormwater rates of 7% is anticipated, but will not be finalized until after the budget is accepted. A new position for a part-time stormwater engineer is included. A new position for Assistant Director of Public Works is also included, part of which will be funded through the stormwater rates. The hybrid and electric vehicle fund remains in the budget, but will again be funded through a rollover of any potential gasoline savings from this year. The solar panels for lift station number 1 that was added to the CIP through an amendment is included in the 2022 budget. Good news for the future. After I asked the acting police chief if the department plans to purchase a hybrid vehicle in 2022, he said they are looking closely at purchasing an admin vehicle for the department that is a hybrid. For now, there is no plan to purchase a hybrid squad car in the coming year. A few notes on the remaining timeline. A public hearing on the budget will be held tomorrow, October 12th, at the beginning of the Common Council meeting at 7:30 p.m. Alder amendments are due at 4:30 p.m. sharp this Thursday, October 14th, and I do plan to submit amendments. I'm happy to chat about my plans individually with any of the committee members. If you have items you want to be amended, please speak with me ASAP. Amendments cannot be proposed on the floor. Alder amendments are released to the public on 10/22. A bulk of the council discussion about budget amendments will occur at committee of whole on 10/27, starting at 7 p.m. There will be a second and final public hearing on November 10th during the Common Council meeting, starting at 7:30 p.m. This is your best chance to publicly advocate for any amendments that are important to you. After the public hearing, alders will discuss and vote on amendments one by one, following by the adoption of the amended budget. Item 2 in her email. I requested that several items coming before the council be referred to RCC, but the timing didn't work out as the items are being referred tomorrow and will come back to council on October 26th before we meet next. If you have any thoughts on these, the committee is free to comment to me directly. Send an email to the entire council to the email address council@mayor@fitchburgwi.gov or publicly on 10/26 when the items come back to the council. The items are Resolution R-195-21, authorizing intersection of Lacey Road and Seminole Highway to be controlled by a roundabout. Resolution R-196-21, authorizing intersection of East Sherrill and South Cyan be controlled by protected intersection. You can find these items in the agenda packet for October 12 council meeting on the city website. Item 3 in our email. We are still recruiting for a new RCC member. We have received a couple of applications, but encourage individuals to continue applying. I expect the mayor to make this appointment at the October 26th meeting. To the committee, consider reaching out to any individuals that you would like to see apply. If you want info on boards and commissions in general, she's lists the website, info on RCC, the application process. She just gives links to those websites. And then links to send to the committee. She said you don't need to read them aloud. So I'll share her email with you that has all those links. So that's the council update from Gabriella. So make sure if there's any issues that she brought up that you would like to follow up with her, please reach out to her.
Yeah, I guess, is Shelley no longer a member of RCC?
I guess technically she still is.
And this was filling another spot, okay.
So she, and Ron, just to clarify, she's not currently.
Oh, she's not.
So her spot is currently vacant.
Oh, okay. So
Mhm.
she's no longer on the committee then.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, staff and committee.
Before we move on, Ron, when was that effective, Claudia? When did Shelley turn that in?
I have to look at the email that she sent. She sent an email to the mayor, and I believe that would be the effective date.
Well, she may, depending on what that date is, on her last meeting, September meeting, she should be listed as absent if it's after that meeting date.
Okay, I'll double check. I think it was before that though.
Okay.
So we're filling one position. There wasn't another vacant position that we were trying to fill, that we just didn't have a person in that spot yet. So we don't have two vacant spots. We just have one. Is that correct?
Just the one for Shelley, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make
Okay,
sure
I'm
we're
sorry.
all on
I'm
the same
sorry to
page.
get back on this because we talked about the minutes earlier, but since we didn't get a draft in advance, that's my excuse. Josh, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but did you notify Ron in advance or Claudia that you wouldn't be at last meeting?
Yes, he did. I didn't read his email till after the meeting.
Then,
Not far in advance, and my apologies, but yes, I did.
well, then it should be, when it says RCC members absent and it gives his name in parentheses after his name, it should say excused.
I'll make a note on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
I didn't want you to suffer the penalty for being unexcused.
I was just gonna ask what that was.
You might have to take the minutes.
Now, I did get your email, but I didn't read it till after the meeting, or actually following morning.
I'm sure.
And it
Ron
might
was
be
in the
helpful.
meeting by the time.
Okay,
Go ahead, Claudia.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, if you are going to send an email to Ron, letting him know that you're going to be out, it would be helpful to CC myself and Phil as well. I'm not sure, Josh, if you did, I can't remember. But that's just so, when Phil's writing up the meeting minutes, he'll know that it's an excused
I'll
absence.
definitely do it in the future. Thank you. I didn't on the last one.
Okay.
okay, moving on to item 7, staff and commissioner updates. Claudia, do you want to go over these? Solid waste 7A.
Yes, let me share my screen again here. So Joe Spare with Pelletary and I gave a presentation to Fitchburg Active Women's Group on September 28th. The topic was recycling myths and realities in Fitchburg. We had a really great turnout, standing room only in the rooms.
Wow.
So that was actually Jill, who's the senior center director. She said that's the biggest event that they've had since COVID started. So that was pretty cool to see that turnout. And people were really
How many people?
I think I was told that the capacity for that room with all of the chairs spaced out was around 60. So I think it was around that number.
Wow,
Wow.
It was a lot of
good
people.
for you.
Yeah.
And it was great. People were really engaged. We had, we showed of course, the Kip Street Station video, which is really effective and awesome. And then we also showed RCC's video about our recycling drop-off site. That was really cool. And then we also had some like prepared slides, and then we had a demonstration where we just pulled out typical items that you would see in a household, and we talked about what the appropriate way of either recycling or disposing of those items were. And people were really engaged. I feel like I have done something similar in the past with trying to get audiences engaged with those types of activities, and I haven't always had success. So that was really cool, and people had a lot of questions. Actually, we had to turn off, ask people to just come up afterwards with additional questions because we were going on for a lot longer than we were originally anticipating. But anyway, so if you're interested in checking out that presentation, there is a recording available.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and then this happened a little while ago, but I didn't put any photographs in the staff update. So I went ahead and took a photograph of the litter fence that was erected behind the cardboard containers. And then another thing that happened was we had all of the cardboard containers swapped out. There were several that were just in really bad shape. Some where the lids were not fitting properly, or a couple of them had broken. So we went ahead and had Pelletary just replace them with all new containers that are just in good shape. It looks a lot better. And then we ordered these decals to go on the front that just says cardboard only. So that looks a lot nicer.
Great.
Nice job.
than in the past.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, this might be an odd question. Have we ever thought about putting like a pole there to allow residents to more easily close, like if those lids flip open on a windy day or whatever, they're pretty challenging to get closed.
Yeah.
And then I know the rain can kind of ruin the whole batch. Like, have we thought about a designated area to give people something that would allow them to push those back closed?
You know, I don't think that has ever been a topic. Offhand, I'm not aware of some sort of poll like that, but I think it's definitely not a bad idea.
I mean, you could just get a pretty basic piece of hollow steel or whatever. I go there often to drop off, and I always shut them, and I'm like climbing on the dumpsters to get them closed, and I'm still
Sure.
in shape to do that, but I would imagine there's tons of residents that aren't interested in doing that.
Sure, yeah.
I wonder if Pelletieri has some suggestions for that.
I'll reach out and see if they have any ideas. I think that's a good point because they really are a challenge to close.
Yeah.
I will definitely agree with you on that.
And they're like a sail. I mean, on a windy day, if you get that open to get your boxes in there, there's a real good chance it's going to flip up, or just even without people doing it. I think if it can get under there, sometimes it just happens. So
Sure, yeah. Let me ask around, see if I can find any ideas on that. Nothing comes
Rick,
to the top of my head.
Rick, do you have some
but-
thoughts?
Yeah, about a 4-foot 2x4 works really well. I usually kept one in the city truck that I had, and so when before. But that's a great suggestion, Josh. It would be nice to actually have something that the users could use. I mean, either it could be potentially affixed to the back of the, generally where I use it, especially is closing it or opening it. But you could potentially cable it to the truck. I mean, to the dumpster, or you could have like just a loose just a 4-foot 2x4 that somewhere strategically located, or a couple of them that people could use. But that's really a great idea.
Or round pole, not lighter. Don't have to worry about getting splinters or anything.
Yeah, I was thinking almost like almost like those crossing flags that you get at like a bin with a couple of them in it that you could both use to prop it open if you want to toss stuff in, but then also shove it closed. Yeah, and I think there's a couple of design options that would be pretty inexpensive.
Good idea.
Sorry, I know, random aside. Sorry, keep going with
No,
the
that's
No, that's
great.
good
That's
ideas.
definitely something we can look into. All right, so just moving on here, stormwater update. Findings from the Curry Court and Old Indian Trail study were presented to the committee of the whole, and there's a link here to the recording of the presentation. A meeting with residents regarding Florida Drive and Lyman Lane, that CIP project, where we're recommending the sump pump collection system that is coming up this Wednesday. So if you're interested in attending, reach out to me and we'll get you signed up with a Zoom link. New pond identification signs have been installed at several stormwater facilities throughout the city, and you can see what those look like here.
Claudia, on the Curry Court, when will council be making their decision on that?
So the next step with Curry Court would be for us to put together a recommendation on, well, no. The next step is for us to get a contractor in place to do a design for us. So the feasibility study had different options, and then we will get someone on board to do the design piece of it. So when that goes through council, that can be when council decides officially, yay or nay, whether to go forward with that design.
Well, when does council weigh in on which option they would like you to pursue?
So I talked to Bill about that. He said that there's a couple ways to do it. One way is to have side-by-side resolutions that go through. One would be to, for example, for Curry Court specifically, I think we would definitely go forward with dredging in the park. And then we would definitely go forward with some improvements along Curry Court. But the piece that is not necessarily as obvious if it would be recommended is the pumping piece.
Yeah.
Or the gravity drainage to the south. And I think between those options, the gravity drainage to the south was the more recommended of the two because it was more cost effective. So
And the residents prefer that.
yeah, the residents also prefer that to the pumping station. So what we could do is we could put one resolution that just has the things that we think will definitely be something that we want to pursue, and then another resolution that also includes the a design for that gravity drainage to the south, and then the instructions to council would be to make a decision on what you want to do, and then you would approve one of those resolutions and not approve the other.
Did the committee of the whole give you any feedback or any direction?
Not particularly, no. So that was,
Okay.
yeah, that was something that I was hoping to get out of that discussion, but I didn't feel like I left with a clear, here's what we want to see in terms of
That's too
path
bad.
forward. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're just going to put two resolutions through, and they'll approve one and not the other. And then the way we'll write the contract is, that will be a task that can be easily cut out if council decides not to approve that piece. All right, so, and then next Monday, we're having a presentation to the Board of Public Works regarding the potential assistance program for that backyard stormwater issues topic that was task 2 of EOR's contract. So we will be putting that to them next Monday. And I imagine this is something that RCC will also see in the future. But if you are interested in tuning in for that, it will be available at that time.
Who's presenting it?
It will be both myself and then Nick Hayden with EOR, who was working on the feasibility study.
Okay.
And no sustainability update this time. So, so that's it.
Thank you, Claudia.
Is this your last meeting and before your, wow.
Yeah.
I'll say that during the announcements though.
Too late.
Yeah. All right, just one final thing under item 7D, activities being conducted or monitored by commissioners. Just saying one thing I'd like to note, Claudia, I don't know who to talk to or we should talk to, but they did fire hydrant flushing just recently. And on our street, they flushed for about 20 minutes and every leaf on our street and Tudor went into the gutter, into the storm drain. So they're flushing fire hydrants, but they're also cleaning our streets of leaves when they do that. I mean, it was like a river going down the street. People were just outside their yards, just gawking at the flow. So, but it cleaned the streets up.
Yeah, and I think that's a good
not where we
recommendation.
want the leaves to go.
I know.
I think that's a good recommendation. I'll definitely
They could do
mention that to our utility engineer, because that's something we could coordinate.
Yeah.
Making sure we're doing our street sweeping prior to doing those fire hydrant flushing. I think that's just a little bit more coordination on staff's part, but I think that's a good observation there.
Okay. All right, anything else? If not, we can move on to announcements. Claudia?
Well, so this is probably my last meeting for a couple of months. I'm planning to return at the end of March next year. And so Bill will be my backup when I'm out. And I did provide Ron with a list of all of the tasks that I typically do for RCC and who my backup is, but for like 95% of them, my backup is Bill. So that's what I put in the staff packet. The only other big one that is not Bill will be the spring recycling day event. Phil is going to be the backup for that one. Otherwise,
Should we email Bill, or will he be monitoring your email address?
you should email Bill. I don't believe
Okay.
he'll, but I'll have an away message for my email directing people to email Bill.
And you gave Ron your draft of the annual report, the one that you've done so far?
I don't remember if I did, but if I did not, I will do that before
I
I
don't think
leave.
you have, no.
Yeah, I know I started working on that.
Yeah. And you talked about some items to be covered, but I haven't seen the annual report yet.
Yeah, and I think what I was planning to do was I was planning to just hand that off to Bill in a pretty finalized state. Because I'm going to do my pieces, but then there are some sustainability pieces that also need to be updated. So I'll do my pieces and then Phil will do his pieces, and then it will just be included in the whichever month we had that on the agenda for.
Well, we'll need to include information from the upcoming clean sweep and e-cycling event. So it's still draft mode. But thank you so much for working on all these things in advance.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia.
Yes, no problem.
And best of luck to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Will you circulate a picture?
I will do that. Yes.
Well, good luck with everything. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
We're gonna miss you.
Oh, yeah, we will.
I'll be too busy to miss anything.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
But if I think of it, I'll miss you.
You'll miss these boring meetings because your life will be so filled with other things.
Yeah.
Boring compared to kids, sorry, not actually.
All right, with that, we're right on schedule. So 9 o'clock, well, 9:01. So thank you.
Good
everyone.
job. Good job, Chris.
Good
Yeah.
job, Chris.
All
See you
right.
around.
All right. Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.